Okay, so good day class. So today I will just be giving you a short overview slash laboratory tour of an ideal histopath laboratory. So this is so that you can familiarize yourself with the setup, the equipments, and the process flow of transforming tissues into glass slides that we can examine. Okay, so every laboratory starts with a receiving area. So this area is where samples get sent to for logging and processing. So these are the examples of our different types of tissues. So this is an example of a breast mass. So this type of tissue or any particular type of tissue actually is submerged in what we call formalin. So this formalin is what fixes the tissue so it does not degrade anymore or decompose. So once the technologist is finished with examining the tissue, he logs it into the log sheet. So when the tissue samples are ready and logged, they are sent to the laboratory at the back. Okay, so let's go there. Okay, so this is a typical example of a grossing area. So in the grossing area, tissue samples are dissected and cut into small pieces so they can fit inside these tissue cassettes. So as you can see, this is our tissue cassette. These can be opened so that the representative section of the tissue can be placed inside. You close it, you put the label here with a pencil, and then this is actually ready for tissue processing. So who does the gross examinations or the grossing? This is usually done by our histotechnologist or whoever pathologist is ready for availability. Okay, so after the tissues are done, we actually go to the next step, which is tissue processing. Okay, so this is an example of a tissue processor. If you recall, the tissue cassettes that we processed are actually placed inside the chamber. It is closed and then it is run to process overnight. So the tissues can transform with all the different reagents and chemicals, the alcohols, the xylene, the paraffin, they all go inside the tissue, and then the next day in the morning you're ready for the next step. Now it is okay, so the next morning after the tissue cassettes are done with the processor, we usually go through the embedding process. So with the embedding process, we have different types of molds. So depending on the size of tissue, we use a different variety. After that, we place the tissue cassette inside the mold and then fill it with molten paraffin. So once the molten paraffin is filled the mold, we usually put it in a cold plate. This is ice cold, and then this is an example of a tissue that's being cooled down. When the tissue is actually done, it'll be transformed into these tissue blocks. So this is an example of a placenta, actually a piece of placenta. And so that is the whole embedding process. When you're done with embedding, you actually go to the next step, which is actually tissue processing, or actually tissue trimming and sectioning. This is where the biggest and the most important machine is for the histotechnologist is. This is actually the microtome. So the way the microtome moves is it actually goes up and down as seen here, so that you can actually cut these tissues into the blade, which is actually right here. Okay, so once you've got tissue sections and you floated them in our flotation bath and you dried them in our slide dryer, you're ready for staining. Okay, so now this is actually our staining and mounting area. So staining is where we put all the glass slides that we sectioned into different chemicals, a step-by-step procedure, and different dyes and stains so that we can actually put coloration on the tissue. So after we've done that, we're going to use a mounting media right here and then place cover slips on the tissue. So once the tissue have been cover slipped, we're going to the next step. Okay, so these are just Okay, so once our glass slides are ready for microscopy, they're usually put in our microscope, and then the pathologist or the histotechnologist will examine the tissues for quality and assess the interpretation of the tissue samples to diagnose the patient. So two things can happen here. The pathologist can come here actually to view the microscope itself, or we can transform these into our digital imaging. So in digital imaging, we can actually move the glass slides and visualize them via digital images in our computer. Okay, so now you've got a sense of what a histopath laboratory looks like. It is important to know that each and every area and each and every step is actually crucial to processing tissues properly. So throughout this course, we'll be going through each and every one of these steps in depth so you can understand the principle and how to troubleshoot anything that comes in your way. Okay? Thank you.